Welcome back to this week's AMT Fresh Produce Market Overview. Potato prices stabilized at very low levels, trading 2% higher last week, but still 53% below last year's price levels. Onions dropped by 6% as volumes surged, while tomato prices slipped further with higher supply, keeping pressure on this market. Carrots fell sharply, peppers remained steady, and cabbages continued to struggle over the past week. Meanwhile, pumpkins and garlic stood out with stronger prices. But stay tuned as we unpack the full outlook across vegetables and fruits, including the trends shaping demand and exports for the coming weeks. This video is proudly made possible by Villa Crop Protection. Please do me a small favor and subscribe to our channel. It will help us to improve this content and info in this video and make sure it remains free to everyone. Potato prices stabilized on very low levels the past week and traded 2% higher on R36.96 per 10 kg, down 53% from last year. Weekly volumes jumped by 12% and remains about 18% higher year on year. Extra large potatoes traded at R46, large at 42, mediums at 35, and smalls even lower at 23 rand. Mondials increased slightly to 38 rand, while Sephiras stayed around 42 rand per 10 kg. The prices are under severe pressure at the moment due to high volumes and demand that's not able to keep up. It's however looking slightly better for this week, with most of the Christiana and Douglas producers now out of the market and volumes that can come down a bit. Out of Limpopo, however, there might be one or two extra producers that comes into the market over the next week. The expectation is therefore that volumes will remain mostly sideways or on similar levels for now, but the start of the new month can hopefully bring some new demand into the markets and therefore also result in a slightly higher price over the next week. In 2022, which can be compared to the current price trend, the prices remained low in September and October and only started to increase from November onwards. Potato exports also decreased the past few months and is usually on its lowest level over this time of the year. In 2022, however, exports picked up sharply from August until November, and if this can happen again, it can bring some relief to the local markets in terms of volumes. Onion prices dropped by 6% to R50.75 per 10 kg, which is almost 9% lower year on year. Volumes increased by a massive 25% last week and is now 12% higher year on year. Large onions traded at R51, mediums at 57 and extra large at 48, while small onions stayed on a low level of R31 per 10 kg. Brown onions averaged on 48, while white onions traded on R50. The latest red onion price increased to R126 per 10 kg last week. A slight price increase is expected over the next week due to better demand expected, but prices are still expected to remain in a general downward trend towards the end of the year due to higher supply levels that is also expected on the markets. Prices can however remain above the R40 per 10 kg mark over this period. Exports are also on its lowest level from September to November each year usually, which can now also keep prices on a lower level. Tomato prices decreased the past week to R6.26 per kilogram, down 3% week on week, while volumes jumped by about 11%. The average price is now 47% lower, while volumes are about 39% higher year on year. Large tomatoes traded at R6.38, extra large at R7.51, and mediums at R6.44. Prices were slightly better over the weekend, with the market expecting slightly lower volumes. But it quickly picked up again with the warmer weather to the northern production areas, which will likely keep prices under pressure again this week. Carrot prices dropped sharply again to R4.22 per kilogram, almost 12% lower the past week and now 5% lower year on year. Large carrots traded on R4.63, mediums dropped to R3.46 and smalls traded on R1.91. Carrot prices will struggle to keep up over the next 2 or 3 months due to higher volumes expected that will put a lot of pressure on the price. This video is proudly sponsored by Villa. With world-class solutions like Masterlock, tailored for South African conditions, Villa helps you manage risk and increase productivity with research-backed confidence. Pepper prices stabilized on R22.91 per kilogram, with green peppers now on R20.78, yellow peppers on R26.80 and red peppers on R24.63. If we remain on a similar trend as in 2023, we can expect prices to trade sharply lower from September until November, when volumes usually start to pick up. The cabbage market remains under severe pressure, with prices 14% lower on R2.10 per kilogram, which is now 49% lower compared to last year this time. The expectation is that this price will remain under pressure over the next 2 months as well. Sweet potato prices increased by 10% to R5.30, but is still about 30% lower year on year due to 74% higher volumes compared to a year ago. Spinach increased to R2.76, but is likely to stay on a lower level until October. The average butternut price increased to R8.57 and is scarce at the moment, while pumpkin prices recovered to R5.55 and is now 127% higher year on year. Pumpkins can stay on this higher level until October and possibly start to decrease in November again. Garlic prices increased to R73.57, with local garlic on R71.34 and imported garlic jumping to R74.80 per kilogram. Visit amtrends.co.za for our latest reports, detailed charts and free downloadable reports. You can also click the like button if you enjoy this content. Banana prices dropped by about 2% to R7.71 per kilogram last week. We're still on a similar price trend than last year, when we saw prices shooting up from this point towards the end of the year. The forecast, however, indicates that prices will peak in October, but it still looks like better prices over the next 2 months at least. The apple price traded 0.4% lower at R11.63, which is now 8% higher compared to a year ago. Pears also decreased by 3% last week to R9.50 per kilogram, about 8% lower than a year ago. Orange prices decreased by 1% to R4.98 and is still about 14% lower compared to last year this time, with the local volumes up 31% year on year. From September to November, we usually see higher prices as volumes decrease, but expect the usual increase in price to be later this year due to more local volumes now. Avocados decreased to R20.88 per kilogram and is now on a similar level compared to a year ago. Viertes traded on R28, Haas on R17 and Pinkertons at R23 per kilogram. From August onwards, we usually see prices trending upwards towards the end of this year, so expect ours to become more expensive as the year progresses. Grapes traded on R85.91 per kilogram, pineapples increased to R8.57, lemons dropped to R5.35 last week, while blueberries also traded lower on R106 per kilogram. This episode was proudly brought to you by Villa Crop Protection. For more detailed insights and forecasts, visit amtrends.co.za now. I'm Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week.